Hello everyone. Today we are here to discuss a topic called future-proof business models and why platforms are future-proof. And before we get into the topic, here is a brief introduction about me. I am Siddharth Sharma. I work as director and digital strategy consulting EY Singapore. Before this, I have had over a total of 15 years of experience in strategy and digital consulting across Big Four in APAC, EU, and US. I'm also a technology author. I blog very regularly and a podcast host on the topic of future tech and digital maturity models. I thought of sharing with you my personal views on the topic of how to build future-proof businesses. Coming to slide 1, we must notice that over the last 30-40 years, there is a big change that has happened. And this change is the most prominent during the last 10 or 15 years. If you were to see the most valuable companies in the world starting from the year 1980 till the year 2005, you would find a lot of consistency in the names that were there, and the companies that were in the top in terms of market cap, they remained on the top. But suddenly since 2010, when the smartphones became the new normal and everybody got access to the internet, there was a big reshuffle of this list. And as we see in the October 2020, in the midst of the COVID, the top 6 companies out of the top 10 companies are tech companies. And what is also interesting about these tech companies is that they are not just the big tech companies, they are companies that have their business models which are platform based. And they are the most valuable companies. And by the way, since October 2020 till the time we are in, July 2021, some of these companies have even crossed $2 trillion or $3 trillion in their market cap, as per this analysis done by Refinitiv and ETFDB. And if you were to think that this presentation is only about the big tech companies, I would also like to highlight this phenomena that this platform business model observation is happening not just in the big tech or the big companies. In fact, 98% of the unicorns that are there in the world, unicorns are those companies that are valued at $1 billion or more. They are platform-based business models, and they are scaling very fast and disrupting companies across industries. What unicorns are doing is they are attacking the traditional companies which rely on linear supply chain models, capex-heavy business models, and they are disrupting them by controlling the access to the customers. Now, I would like to take you through what actually led to this big shift before we get into explaining what business models are all about. According to me, there were two major, divides or two major reasons why this happened. The first was the business and the industry related reasons. What happened during the last 15 to 20 years is that there was the rise of this new digital economy. As of 2020, we have 3.5 billion plus smartphone devices, and they have become the primary source how consumers interact with the company. And there are over 20 to 25 billion connected IoT or Internet of Things devices in the year 2020. They are smart devices connected with each other and talking to each other and sharing data. The second big factor that led to this change was that data and internet are now available like electricity. They are accessible to everyone, even the most rural and the remote areas of any country, they have access to data and internet. In fact, most of them, and as a result, these consumers, which were earlier left out by the big traditional players, they are now the new age consumers for these big tech platform-based companies. The computing speed has grown so fast, and the storage cost has gone down. This is also popularly known as the Moore's law. And there are communities of developers that have come up and sprung up, and they are developing products at exponential speed. Payments and the VC infrastructure has come in. So the consumers are able to transact online thanks to the big credit card ecosystem and the e-wallet ecosystem that now exists, and payments have become frictionless. Moreover, the venture capitals of the world, the VCs of the world are willing to invest in these new startups so that they can scale up and reach the place called profitability and then ultimately get the IPO done, which was very difficult 10 to 20 years ago. Most of these startups would die because there was no VC funding available for scale. The logistics and the supply chain and the RPA capabilities, the robotics process automation has come up, and there is a global e-commerce model present everywhere. Now, these were the changes from the business side and the industry side. But as I mentioned on the very first slide of mine, that the only real innovation is customer adoption, as said by Jeff Bezos, and that's the trickiest part of it. So something interesting happened on the consumer side of it as well. The business models are now democratic, and we are living in the shared economy or the gig economy. Access matters more than ownership. We all use the likes of Uber and the Grabs of the world, and yet we don't own those cars. So we use them when we want them, which means that access matters more than ownership of the vehicles or ownership of the assets. The individuals are socially networked. People know what is happening in the life of other people, and they see each other on social platforms. Recently, after Facebook, TikTok from China, or which the parent company of which is ByteDance, it became the second app in the world to cross 3 billion accounts. So it means almost 40% of the world population is connected on that platform. And there are other platforms like that as well. On-demand models have come up, mobile app, voice, face tech, and these were all brought into prominence by the FAANG companies, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and the bad companies of China, Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. And there are many more China tech companies. Thanks to the progress in artificial intelligence, the personalized services have become more popular and possible as well. Data analytics and the computing capabilities are so good that the companies are able to provide personalized services on a real-time basis. Consumers have become time poor and they are convenience living. One thing that I always try to tell my clients is that while designing the business models, and if you are really serious about designing future-proof business models, you must work under the assumption that your consumer is the laziest person and yet they are the smartest person in the world. They are after value, but they want it only if it comes with convenience. And they don't want to work, anything more than pressing a button of a mobile app or using a gesture or a voice command to get access to the services that they want in an on-demand manner. So remember, your consumers are getting time poor and they are convenience lovers. Coming to what is a platform business model. Now, most of the people confuse that platform business model is same as building a website or having a mobile app. Here is one important, difference that I would like to highlight, that all platform companies usually have a mobile app or are web-based models, but all websites and mobile apps are not platform-based business models. And what do I mean by that? In the platform business models, what really matters is the critical mass of the suppliers and the buyers and even the partners who are offering that service. What value proposition is being sold on that platform? What is the delivery model? Is the company selling only its own products and services, or is it aggregating the products and services of the third party and selling on that platform? Scalability and the network effects are embedded in the platform model, and network effects are such a crucial moat or a strategic advantage point that these platform models play on, is that as more and more suppliers join one side of the platform, more and more consumers feel the urge to join it, because that is where the maximum products and services are available. And as more and more consumers join it, more and more suppliers actually feel the need to be present on the platform, because that's where the demand is and the transactions are taking place. Four prominent, while building the platform-based business models, you must think about the 4 layers when it comes to the architecture. The first is the interaction layer. How is the buyer side interacting with the supplier side? Transaction layer, which is like how the actual transaction is taking place. Data architecture layer is how is all the data of the buyers, suppliers, and the partners of the ecosystem getting collected, connected, and activated to offer the best-in-class services. And finally, the infrastructure layer that supports all of this, like your platform architecture and what all modes in which you actually take it to the market. How are you actually feeding the channels that ensure that the customer service is of top-notch quality? So that in a nutshell is what platform is all about. It is a community of buyers and sellers, often facilitated by a set of partners who interact via the digital channels to exchange some products and services, which may be digital in nature or which may be physical in nature. But the interactions are more often than not digital in nature. Now, why are they future-proof? And I would, come to this point because the first important thing is that platforms have the advantage of scaling up exponentially. 15 to 20 years ago, if a company had to enter a new geography, they had to build up the supply chain models, build capital-intensive, investments in that particular country, and then grow. But nowadays, imagine a consumer electronic company. I would not name the company, but one consumer electronic company, just by tying up with the e-commerce players in India, sold over 2 million handsets in a matter of months. Now, and they did not have any kind of capital investments made in the supply chain in that country. And this is true for most of the models out there, that the companies which are product based, they tie up with the e-commerce companies in those local geographies, and as a result, they get access to a ready-made supply chain, machinery that exists and that has been built up by the e-commerce player. And if the product is digital product, then it becomes even more easy. This is the reason why a lot of SaaS models or the gaming companies have managed to grow into geographies where they have very limited presence. So they have the advantage of scaling exponentially. The second point is that they control the digital and partner community. So platforms actually guard the access to the end consumer. As we have seen that all the big companies now, the big tech companies, the strategic advantage that they enjoy is that they have a high user base. As a result, they can enter new and launch new services again and again because the user base is loyal, and they have high stickiness to the platform because of the service that they have received. And these platforms also have this realization that eventually they try to emerge as the one-stop solution or the super app of their industry. As a result, they enable partner and third-party integration. So if the partner wants to sell anything on the platform, they charge commission for it. So they make money not on just their own products, but they also make money on the products and services sold on their platform. The third is the network effects, which I already touched upon, that the best platform companies leverage double-sided network effects, while some companies leverage only single-sided network effects. Double-sided network effects is when, as due to result of increase in the suppliers, there is not only an increase in the suppliers, there is also an increase in the number of consumers, and vice versa. So network effects are from both the sides. If your friend joins a social platform, then that person is generating more and more data, and as a result, you feel like joining it, and many mutual friends that you both have also feel the urge to join it, and that is what network effects is all about. Lower cost. As I mentioned, these platform-based companies, they believe in keeping capital investments to the minimum. They don't operate in industries which are heavy capital intensive, and if they operate in those industries, they operate with a marketplace model where they try to get access to the end consumer and then negotiate terms with the companies which are the producers and the manufacturers of this heavy industrial equipment and vehicles, right? So the product testing is very agile and development time period gets reduced to weeks. Imagine a product company trying to launch new products. Sometimes it takes them months and years to do that. But in case of platform-based companies, they can test new features in the digital platform in matter of weeks and sometimes even days, by using agile, method of testing and operating. The last point why they're future-proof is, the penultimate point is that they have industry-level control over the ecosystems. Most of these platform companies are the orchestrators of the models that exist within their industry. Just to give you an example, in today's age, we cannot talk about mobility without talking about companies like Uber. Uber operates on a very interesting model that not only, it is a global mobility ride-sharing company, but all the geographies where it used to operate and where it, retrieved itself, it actually, did some transaction with the companies operating there. As a result, it owns equity stakes in the countries, where it used to operate. This is true for Southeast Asia. This is true for China. This is true for Russia. And they have agreements with all the players who are now operating there. But a part stake of it is owned by Uber. So what I mean by that is that the platform-based companies are actually not just shaping the future of the interactions that happen with the consumer, but they are shaping the future of the entire industry and how it operates across geographies. So they control the access to the end customer and also have some influence over the partners who are participating in that ecosystem. The last point is that because the interactions that are happening on the platforms are digital in nature, it is possible to use artificial intelligence to bring out the best-in-class data insights. The consumers can be provided products and services they are looking for. And one amazing example of this is Amazon's recommended products. So every time you actually look for something in Amazon has access to the data or what you are looking for. And then generally, because of the data analytics and the AI engine it has, it is able to make logical and intelligent recommendations to you. And as long as the consumers consent to this, it is actually something that the customers like. Why? Because it is saving them time and it is giving them options. So anytime you search for one option, there are five other options that these e-commerce companies actually share with you. And as I said, it is all ethical and within the guidelines of data sharing usually, and only to ensure that the customer experience is superior. As a result, the customer feels that I would like to buy things from Amazon, and this is the reason why I love companies like Amazon, and we all do. Uh, so this is, these are the six reasons why I feel that the platform-based business models are, they experience what I call the future differences, and they are future-proof. One point before we move to the next slide I would like to make is that do not confuse that this is just relevant for B2C companies or business to consumer companies. Platform business models are relevant for even B2B companies or B2B2C companies. Why? Because ultimately there are 7.5 or 8 billion people in this world, and out of that 70 to 80% of them are actual consumers, who use or who make all the transactions. Others are perhaps out of the economic cycle of the world. So as these platforms gain access to these consumers, they can dictate terms even for the B2B companies. So this is the reason why platforms first control the user community and then they try to negotiate terms with the B2B players to give them access to that community. And here is a kind of a futuristic prediction I would like to make is that most B2C and B2B companies, business models will ultimately be disrupted by platform models. And these are just some of the examples of platform models, the big tech that we see, the marketplaces that are there, e-commerce companies, mobility and fintech ecosystems, hardware and software ecosystems like iOS or Android, SaaS players. Software as a service category is the fastest growing category within the cloud. And this is such a disruptive business model that it is just shaking the foundations of the conventional business models. And I strongly recommend the listeners of this, this presentation to explore how the SaaS models within their industries are actually disrupting their businesses. D2C platforms and the loyalty programs are recommended for product-based companies. Now, this last point I would also, I was trying to make a recommendation for the companies which are not, digital natives or the digital first companies. What can they do to protect themselves? I think one important thing that they must do is that they must not let away the access to the consumer go away to these platform companies. They must try to build some means like direct to customer platforms or D2C platforms or their online loyalty programs, which actually maintain that relationship with the end consumer and they don't become, they are not disrupted by the intermediaries, which are the platform companies in this case, which enter this. Just explaining this phenomena in 1 minute is, imagine you are, one of the biggest product companies in the world, but now since you never built up your direct to customer platforms or e-commerce capabilities, you are reliant on a third party e-commerce company to sell your products. That is okay, you have the agreements, but imagine your competitor also has a similar agreement with that e-commerce company, and as a result, your competitor's products are pushed on the homepage of the e-commerce company while your products go back. And then that is where disruption starts. You have to pay to the e-commerce company to ensure that you use their advertisements and the product upgrade features to feature in their homepage. Otherwise, your products get pushed to the background. Thus, it is very important to have your own platforms and direct access to the consumers. On this slide, I would like to touch upon how the evolution of platforms take place. On the left-hand side, I just highlighted why relying only on external e-commerce companies can kill your business. And by e-commerce companies, I'm referring to any company that is controlling your digital interactions. It may not be the e-commerce company, but it could be any company which actually controls the end user, and then you become dependent on that company to reach to the end consumer. So the online distribution in channels and third-party channels which are owned by others, it is okay to have presence on them, but do not restrict your presence only to them. You have to build up your own platforms as well. And billion-dollar companies definitely must do that. One super successful example of a company that is building its own direct-to-customer channels is Nike. And Nike has managed to build up a D2C platform called Nike Direct, which is just producing amazing results. Even during the COVID times, it has managed to ensure that its access between the end consumer does not get diluted. And not just by that platform. We all know that Nike is very active in fitness and the health area. It has its own app, Nike Run apps that ensure that users are connected to the brand directly and not just via some e-commerce company. So after, once you have decided to build up your own platform, the first thing that you must remember is that you can start off as a mobile and a web platform wherein consumers can transact on your platform and buy some products and services that you are selling. The second level of it is the closed platform wherein you are selling not just your own products and services, but you are selling products and services of some limited partners who can, join forces with you. And then as a result, you provide a greater variety or assortment to your end customer who feels that you are not just selling your own products and services, you are giving them something more. The third level of evolution is the open marketplace. Now, open marketplace is like an Amazon, website wherein if you are a seller and if you qualify for all the criteria, you can create an account online and you can, build your own shop on the Amazon platform, and you are good to sell on that, e-commerce company. So imagine you emerging as the open marketplace of, of the products and services relevant for your own industry. This is a huge strategic advantage. Why? If you manage to reach this open marketplace, level, then it means that your partners and your competitors are required to enlist their products and services on your platform to sell, and you make money not just on your own brands, but you make money on as commissions or as a cut, that you negotiate with the partners for the products sold on your platform. The other strategic advantage of this is that open marketplace also gives you a lot of data about your own products and services, and also the products and services of the partners that are being sold on that marketplace. The last evolution of the platform model is what I call the ecosystem of products and services, or the super app, or the multi-platform model. Luckily, or unfortunately, there are very limited companies that manage to reach to the level of super app. But if they do, trust me, this is the holy grail of ecosystem and the platforms, and your business model becomes completely game changing, and you are the most future-proof business model that is present over there. In China, Tencent and Alibaba Group are the examples of the super app business models. And US, which was late to the race, they have started replicating the super app model of the China tech, but they are still not as successful as the China big tech has been. But this super app has been a China phenomenon. There have been attempts in Southeast Asia which are now growing very fast. In super app, what happens is you try to emerge as the one-stop solution for all the products and services that your customer might want, and it is designed around the customer journey. So if you log on to one of the big super apps in the world, you will realize that they are not just selling shopping related products and services. They are selling mobility solutions. They are selling fintech solutions. They are selling any quick solutions that the customer may need during their day-to-day work, or even social networking solutions, edtech solutions. So basically, that app in itself becomes an ecosystem which the customer does not want to leave, and hence all the transactions happen through there. Healthcare is also a very big opportunity in which super apps are now starting to emerge. Imagine having an app which gives you access to all the data points about your health and gives you information about all the preventive measures you must take, and also other records related to your health and fitness. So these are the models. So how can the companies defend themselves? While to fight with a platform company, you have to be a platform company. That's the rule number one. And the second rule is you also need to ensure that your brand is of such an important significance in the eyes of the customer, that the customer always tries to find your brand on all those platforms. So your products and the services strategy must be in place, which includes how to ensure, as the chief marketing officers of the companies that are listening to this, how can you amplify the presence of your brand so much that it becomes platform agnostic, and customers, when they get into any e-commerce company platform, they are only looking for your brand. What kind of customer experience are you giving to the end users? Is it frictionless, or is there a lot of steps involved wherein the customer eventually drops out of the journey of purchase journey of the transaction? We spoke about, I spoke about the ecosystem evolution. So eventually all the ecosystems that do not evolve, they become stagnated and they die. As a result, it's very important that you have a roadmap for the ecosystem evolution. And think about how do you build this super app or the future-proof business model which creates dependencies of the consumers as well as the industry dependencies on your business model. And the foundation of all this is building an agile organization where decision-making is quick, less and less bureaucratic, and the company thinks in terms of digital-first approach. by digital first approach is that it is not just looking at what is happening within the industry, it is also looking at what is happening outside the core industries. What are the best practices that could be adopted from other industries? If there is nothing else you take away from this presentation, but if you just remember this one thing, that try to study the big tech companies and the SaaS companies in the world. Big tech, the FAMGA companies and the SaaS companies that are software as a service companies in your industry. Trust me, 90% of your work is done, because these models are so disruptive that just by keeping an eye on these models, you will start thinking like a digital first company. And of course, you need to get the talent to support that. So this is how you can defend it. And that was my 20-minute presentation on how to build the platforms and how to ensure that your business model is future proof. You can connect with me on all these platforms: YouTube, Medium, and LinkedIn. I blog excessively on the topic of future of digital data and digital maturity models, and there are a lot of online learning resources which are available for free. And I just wanted to share them with the DMWF community. Thanks for this opportunity, and it was great to share my personal views on this topic of platform.
This is Siddharth Sharma. I go by the name Sid, and I like to talk about digital transformation strategy, ecosystems and platform business models, digital maturity models across industries, startup disruption, and future of technology and work. I run a podcast on the topic of disruption, leadership, change management, and the future of work and business. And I blog extensively on the topic of digital and data ecosystems.